Comedy lead-in now. I don't have to think of a joke because I don't have one. So that was perfect. So it was great. Part of, I think a lot of what we're talking about today is teamwork, is how I see it. And thanks, Rob, for saying I do it all. I actually don't. I have a great team, and one of the members of my team is here today, Brenda Mowbray Walker, and Rob has mentioned volunteering or being drafted into service, and she got drafted to do pictures today, so thanks, Brenda. But the topics that we're covering today are, it's like a deep and wide river, and having a team in place to help with all the various inputs here. I mean, we've got this wide range of experts here today, real estate, long-term care, needs, assisted living, attorneys, all those topics become critically important at different stages of life. And I'm often sitting with a client and think about people who are alone out there that don't have a team. They come. I see a lot of people come with their kids or their parents, and I feel that they're so blessed and so lucky to have my team and me, their own family, kids, other experts. They're able to bring that team together. So what I love about this talk today is talking about churches, friends, family members, how we can all keep an eye out for people who maybe don't have that help. Because it's such a complex world out there these days. Even being on the phone, I go crazy trying to push the right button. All I want to do is talk to somebody. And so if we can have an eye out for people that maybe don't have the advantages of having a team in place, start that for them. I think that's a real service that we can do for others. So where I usually start, and the title here today is, we need to talk. Talking to each other, opening up those subjects. A few of you have referenced that today. We go through a series in our life, a series of conversations. We start out maybe as young adults meeting the person we're going to marry. We go through all these conversations together, share information, make decisions, talk about when we're going to get married, raise our children, educate them, and make decisions about careers, retirement, vacations. Sometimes that's the most we talk about. More than retirement, we talk about our vacations, and it goes on. And we get to a stage where the kids are grown, they're off and doing their thing, and we think, okay, now it's time to relax. And suddenly we find out there's a whole nother series of conversations to be had. And that often has to do with how we're going to help ourselves in our own older age or our parents. So two common sides, and I think it's an equal responsibility from both sides. I hear a lot of talk shows talking about the children, go speak to your parents about their needs. But I think we can talk for our own needs to our kids and start those conversations ourselves. So we maybe don't get to relax as much as we thought we did, because we're going to have to start this series of conversations. But I think it's necessary, and it can save us a lot of anxiety and angst down the road. The next slide, please. I saw a recent study that said 30% of Americans help their family, their parents, either financially or hands-on care. And 75% of us have never talked about it. So that means even the people who are doing it haven't talked about it. So how can we kind of ease into that with our families and avoid having issues come up down the road that were not discussed? I mean, how do I know that I'm going to get taken care of the way I want to if I don't tell the people who are likely to be making those decisions for me ahead of time? So this, I know you probably can't see too well, but it comes from a book that I think is really great that's called The Care Solution. I actually brought a copy of it with me if anyone would like to look at it. But this gentleman, who's a friend of mine, he's since passed away, but it started, he wrote this book because of an issue with his father. One day his father was fine. He used to go visit him once a week, and it went in one day from a once-a-week visit to his dad being completely incapacitated. They didn't realize it had been slowly coming on, as someone mentioned. By the time you have dementia, you've been headed that way for 5 years. But so it was a quick change. He was totally unprepared. He went, had to start touring assisted living and nursing homes in like a 3-day period and had no idea what his dad would have wanted. And his dad could no longer tell him. So it was really, really stressful for him. So he wrote this great book referring to a series of conversations. And I love some of them. They're, start with the big picture. What would you like to see happen? Maybe you're telling your kids, or maybe your kids are asking you. It depends who's got the guts enough to start the conversation. Talking about the home. What's it worth? What do we want to happen to the home? Do we want to leave it to someone, or do we want to sell it? Money conversation. What do we have? Where is it? Who should that go to? What do we want to spend it on? How would we like you to help us spend that? Property, things that Len talked about. There's assets, money, there's things. A lot of times the biggest problems we see in families have to do with artwork and jewelry. It's not so much always the money, it's furniture, things that was precious to someone. And there can be squabbles over that, so you can deal with that ahead of time. The care conversation. Where do I want to live when I can't take care of myself anymore? Mom, Dad, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay in this home? You can spend your money on having in-home care. That costs something. Or you can, maybe you might think your kids are going to take care of you. They might like to know that ahead of time. might not work out so well. So I think that's great. My own parents don't need my help yet. On some things I help them financially or with advice and things like that, but I don't need to help take care of them yet. But I've seen how it can be for other families if they don't plan ahead. And I heard a great phrase one time, we always learn from mistakes. They just don't have to all be our own mistakes. Even better if, I see maybe situations that didn't work out so well for someone else. So I really feel, really lucky in the position I'm in to be able to learn from all these other families that I get to work with, and I hope to apply those to my own, to my own story and be able to share those with others. We met recently with a family who was a really intelligent, educated, successful woman. Her husband was the same. He passed away, and she had never done anything with the money. The division of labor, it's often like that one person handles the money and the other doesn't. But what happened is she knew where nothing was, and she came in with her 2 sons, which was great. She had help, but they were all, forced to kind of dig through drawers and boxes, bank accounts. And it was a really big job sorting that out, and it was very stressful for her, for her sons, because their parents were independent, private people. She couldn't figure it all out on her own, so we worked really closely with them. They came in one day with a stack of envelopes, and in those envelopes were stock certificates, a lot of money. They'd been not in a bank, they were in boxes and drawers, and some were in joint names, so those easily passed to her. Many of them, most of it was in the father's own name, one name. So they were hers. She was going to inherit those, but the process to go through, getting the paperwork signed and in place, sending them off, it was just a really big deal, and we knew how to do it, but when they first found those, they were hysterical. She's like, oh my gosh, am I going to get to keep these? What happens? And so it was a lot of work. Next slide, please. So, that initial conversation might be hard to start, and I found, if we could go to the next slide, please, that a great kind of icebreaker is maybe, let's look at your documents. Do you have all your paperwork in order? Or if you are the person that wants to talk to your children, just saying, hey, I'd like you to see what I have. Because the children are often, reluctant to start the conversation. So sharing with them where your information is stored, who's going to do what. This is actually a picture that comes from a resource, so it's called 25 Documents. The 25 documents you need. Be everything from your marriage license, personal history, who are your doctors, durable health care, and power of attorney that we talked about, your living will, all your estate documents, life insurance policies, bank statements. All these things are places that they're spread around usually. So if you can consolidate that, have a conversation about that, it's often a good way to get started.
Laura, just to, pardon me for adding to this, what Lisa and Rob and I do, if we walk in a situation and this stuff is all over the place, y'all will pay us hundreds, if not $1,000, to collect all of that.
Right.
So it's better to have it together prior to.
Yeah. And you know, one thing I found, it's really easy to get kind of stuck in the weeds when this starts. You know, there's all these great online resources. You can scan it, you can photo it, you can save it in a file. That's overwhelming sometimes. I'm really an advocate of starting with the paper. You know, we're comfortable with paper. We say we're paperless at our office, right, Brenda? But it's kind of like to get your hands on things, and it starts with paper anyway. So if you can get organized that way and then share that information with your kids, even with your spouse. Like my husband, I'm like, you know, what are the passwords to our computer? How am I going to be able to get to anything if you're not here? So that's just really a great place to start. You know, we do this with clients, and we recently, about a year ago, realized we're talking with one gentleman. I've known him a long, long time. He's very savvy, but I was asking for a copy of his homeowner's policy, and he said, "Oh yeah, I don't have that anymore." I was like, "Why not?" He just decided he didn't want homeowner's insurance anymore. His wife didn't know that. You know, so we had a nice conversation, and he's got insurance again, you know? But I mean, these are little bombs, potential bombs that are buried that, you know, you can uncover with just starting with a good conversation. Next slide. There's, good, thanks. You know, there's a whole list, and I've got a copy of it. I'd be happy to give it or send it to anybody. You know, starting with bank accounts, insurance, investments. Consolidating your assets is a good idea as you get older. Introducing your advisor to your children, or your children introducing themselves, so that if there ever is a time that you need help and you can't initiate that conversation, you know, they've already met each other, at least have each other's business cards and know who they're talking to. Automating your bills is a great step. You know, just being reasonable. Having a budget in mind for yourself now, which most of us do, but for later too. How's that going to turn out realistically? It's, you know, really just about planning ahead of time. It's like a business plan, really. So if you plan for contingencies ahead of time, you have a plan in place, you've got insurance lined up, then, you know, just like a good business, your life can run along that way. Next slide. Glenn referred to this 5 wishes. I was going to ask you if you thought, you know, how lawyers and attorneys feel about this document, but this is a really nice piece that we give to clients sometimes. It helps take the legal words and maybe put it in simple language in your writing. It's instructions to your heirs, your spouse, your kids, that says, you know, really, what does all this official language mean to me personally? How do I want to be treated? What kind of care do I want? Down to, you know, do you want music played in your hospital room if you can't ask for it? All those kinds of things takes that weight off of people making decisions. You've already told them specifically what you want. So I think it's a really nice piece. So, you know, all of our goal, and I think the goal that we all have for our families, is that we worry less. This little picture talks about money and worry, but there's 2 good quadrants there. You know, number 4 means you have a lot of money and you don't worry. People who have money sometimes worry more than people who don't, because they're trying to figure out what to do with it later. But there's also, it doesn't have to be all about the money. It's having your information documented, saved where people can get to it for you, where you can get to it, and having those open conversations so that you don't end up having to guess what your parents want, or have your kids guessing what you want. Thank you. So, you know, with some planning and good conversations, I think there's a lot of relief in that process. So, back to talking. Next slide, the last slide, yeah. So, you know, that's really my main advice, I think, is talk to somebody. If you want your kids to know what you want, talk to them, bring them into your story. It's not the most comfortable thing, but using a couple of tools, I think that there's a great place to start. Start simple, and don't get overwhelmed by the details. And I've seen that have a transforming impact on people's families, and so I can personally attest to it, and I'd be happy to answer questions or help anybody if you get to